Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and I'm super excited to have Michelle Harmon on. And we are going to ask the question, is now the time to write that book of your dreams? So she'll be joining me momentarily. She has self-published over 20 books under the name M.E.Harmon, so you should definitely check her out on Amazon. And she also helps people in self-publishing because she has such great experience doing this. You can go to my blog Spotlight series at toscadimateo.com and learn more about her. And she has a nice offer there that you can also explore. So I'm really thrilled for you to meet Michelle. She's a friend of mine. We've been connected for over a year now, and she's just a beautiful human being. She's a self-described nerd. And I know that she's very passionate about getting to the brass tacks of publishing and like what it takes to write and publish your book. So there'll be a lot of practical advice today as well, for sure. And again, for those of you who are new to my Talk About It Tuesday platform, I do this to help people with their personal growth, personal discovery, and healing journey, and just bringing lots of different topics and voices to the table to do that. Because I don't certainly have all the answers or all the ways in that would be of service to you. So I love having these conversations. We go deep and we get real about whatever the topic is that we're talking about. So I'm super stoked. And here she is now. And we're just going to bring her on. Bringing Michelle Harmon on. And you can learn more about her on my blog, and there's also links in the IG post as well from the other day. Yes. Hey, Isha. I'm so glad you're here. Yes, because you got to write your book, my friend. This is the perfect place for you to be. Hello, Michelle. Can you hear me, my friend?
Hi, Tosca.
Hi. So excited that you're here.
Uh-oh. Are we good? Are we good?
I think we're good. We might have a little, okay, the connection's coming in.
Hi.
Hey, looking good, beautiful. We got gray. I've got gray on. Do you have gray on? Are we matching?
I do.
Oh,
It's a bluish
look at,
gray.
see, it was meant to
It's
be.
a
It's meant to
bluish
be.
gray.
Bluish gray. Well, I just did a little bit of a preamble. My BFF
Okay.
Aisha is on because she needs to write a book. So I am glad she has joined. Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, your sound went out for a little bit. Yeah, let's talk about writing that book, because I know that it is like the dream of so many people to write a book. It's like this big thing on their heads constantly. It's like it's on some people's to-do list. It's on a bucket list. So let's talk about it. Let's get to it.
Yes, I'll love it. So, well, first, Michelle, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for being on this platform. Thank you for bringing your energy, your knowledge to the audience that will tune in both live and after the fact. And also, we have Julia who's joining here. Hey, Julia.
Hi, Julia.
I know she has some dreams of writing a book. I think she's actually on the treadmill right now. She's like, I'm gonna work out and get some knowledge. So I was like, please join us. This is perfect. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know that like this can be, just sharing our truth and having conversations in a public venue is can be scary and vulnerable. So thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with everyone today.
I am so happy to do it. I'm excited to be here. And let me tell you, I have like 3 lights pointing at my face, and I still don't have enough light. Am I super dark? Like,
No,
like
we can
dark?
see you.
Okay, I'm dark.
No, you kind
You
of
see
got,
me? Am I good?
you've got some mystery going on. Like part of you is really well, no, it's like it's totally moody. It's moody. It's perfect. I love it. Yes.
I will go with it.
Yes.
Let's go with it.
So maybe just to introduce yourself, share a little bit about you, about your love of books and story, and like a little bit of like where you're from, just whatever you want to share about yourself for everyone here today.
Okay. I am a Queens baby, Queens, New York, born and bred. And let's say, it was in 2012. I got the infamous pink slip. And I got the pink slip and freaked out, didn't know what to do. So it turned out that I had been in with a little contest with my friend. And we were both writing, we were both dabblers. And we both said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to write every day for a week, and we have to hit 3,000 words every week. And if we don't, we give the other person $20. So
Whoa,
we had $100
that's high
yeah,
stakes, high stakes.
yeah,
Yeah.
$100 pot, right? So it was only for those few weeks. And I said, no, I'm going to keep my money, right? So that's how I started my first book, in that contest. So every week I got my 3,000 words in, I kept my 20, and I got her 20, all right? Because she just couldn't keep up. She just did not do it. So flash forward to 2012 when I got my pink slip. I didn't know what to do. And I ended up talking to a personal coach who said, well, you've been talking about wanting to write a book. I had the belief that I had to make money in order for me to quit my job, and then I could write. Then I could be a writer. And a personal coach told me, no, self-publishing is happening now. Amazon has their whole new platform. Why don't you do that? And light bulb. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I sat down. I finished my first novel. It was 80,000 words. I'm a sci-fi fantasy geek, so it's in that genre. And I published my first book. So that's how I got started, because I really needed the catalyst to get me going, and for somebody to bring the idea to me, because I never thought it was okay to be a writer. I never thought. I definitely had the idea of writer or artist meant being broke. And I didn't want to be broke. But I also wasn't paying attention to that calling, because I had taken writing classes throughout college. I had gotten a certification in writing. I had the credentials. I had the training. And then I had the time. All of a sudden, I had the time to do it and nothing to lose. So that's how I actually got into myself. And now I help other people do the same, because there are so many hurdles for this dream. If you have this calling to write, or to write your book, or to write your story, there are so many hurdles to get over. And they seem, I guess it's the case with any dream. The hurdles seem so big, the obstacles seem so big, and you're at the bottom of the mountain. And at the top is your dream, is to write that book. But there's so many things to get over. Is that climb seems impossible. That's what I want to help people do now.
Yes. Oh, well, and oh my gosh, I love that. I love everything that you shared. I love that a personal coach helped you to see what was possible. I love that this has always been a part of you writing. And actually, Aisha is asking, oh, certification in writing, tell me more. So yeah, so
yes. The certification in writing, there was a school at the time. Oh, I'm going to blank on the name, because they actually changed it. But Tosca, I will send you the name later. It was a school online that actually you went through their entire writing course, and you can get the certification could actually go towards college course. They were actually accredited. And you actually worked with a published working writer. And they took you through it step by step. So they didn't say just sit down and write a story. They said, hey, start with an idea. What's your what if scenario? And then you would expand. And you had the opportunity to find out if you were more of a fiction writer or of a nonfiction writer. And I went with fiction. I've been making stuff up in my head from years now. So that's the direction that I went into. And then they actually walk you through that. And then they actually teach you how to get your work published. And it was aimed more at magazines, that type of thing, like publications that take short stories, at least for what I did. My track was getting a publication in short stories, that type of thing.
Mhm.
So that's what I did. So,
Well,
and that's, that was, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And that was the perfect scenario because, okay, now I'm about to get on my high horse. Ready? Okay, well, my high horse.
I'm ready.
If you are brand new, right? If you are brand new to writing, you need someone to teach you the format, the standards of writing, because it helps you grow as a writer. You have to understand structure, because a lot of writers, I get a lot of artists, they immediately want to break the rules and create their own style and their own feel. And no, you have to understand, you have to know how to build a house first. And working with established writer, one who was currently publishing or sending out work, is the best way, well, one of the best ways to go about doing it. I definitely don't think that you need an MFA or anything to write, get your work out there, but you do need to educate yourself on the structure of writing.
Yeah, because what you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I think we're talking about like actually publishing a book, right? And so we know, right, in today's day and age, everybody is publishing, everybody is creating content, right? Like, and what I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like there's a difference between like writing for pleasure or writing a newsletter, like versus like really creating something that will be sellable or of service. Am I? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, how do you, how do you see it in terms of? Because I think that what we can do is we can also put a lot of steps in front of ourselves that maybe aren't necessary, right? Or like, and that just more things to hold us back. So like, if somebody's out there and they're like, well, I think I'm a good writer. Do I really need the support of somebody that has done this? Like, what would you say to those who are like, I'm not really sure, like, I feel confident in my writing, I just don't know the how-tos of a book,
Well, it all depends on what you're talking about, because we're talking about two different animals. If you are thinking about writing articles and writing content where you get there are still magazines, right? Like, yes, there are still a few magazines out. Like, let's say you want to get published in a magazine. And you know what? It's so funny. When I actually got started, there is a thick book, like this thick, called The Marketing Guide, the Guide to Publishing and Marketing Guide. It's a thick book, and it listed all of the publications where you can send your work to, both fiction and nonfiction. I don't know if it exists anymore. Things have changed so rapidly. Amazon has changed the game. I mean, Amazon, might be a little bit of the devil, but at the same time, it has provided so much access and has changed the game so much. To answer your question, it all depends on what your passion is. I don't like using the word passion because I think it's a very loaded word, because it makes it sound like, oh, writing makes my heart beat all the time, I must create. It's not necessarily that feeling. It's maybe more what you like, what your drive is towards. So getting back to your question, it depends. If you want to write for articles, nonfiction publications, then you have to figure out how to get onto that track. And that's the same thing for fiction. You just need to figure out where you are now and what your next step needs to be. So really, let's say if you're at zero, you just have an idea about writing a book. Your next step is really to sit down at your computer or get out your pen and paper if you're really old like me and start writing. Start getting your work down. And then you go on to your next step. So it doesn't feel overwhelming all at the same time. And then ultimately, yes, you do need a guide. All right. I'm also a book geek. All right. I'm a book geek. So when I need information, the first thing that I do really is go find a book. Like, oh, there must be a book on it somewhere. I'm going to go find it. So how to get your article published, how to write a book, how to publish a book. There's information out there. You just have to find it. And then here's the really challenging part. You also have to find the right guide for you. It's kind of like when you were in school, maybe there wasn't a concept you weren't getting from one teacher and then somebody else came along, explained it, and you got it like that. It's the same thing. You have to find someone or something that you connect with that can help you get to the next step. But that's the only thing that you have to worry about is the next step.
I love
You
it.
know?
You're like, yeah, you're like breaking it down, breaking it out. First of all,
Yes.
there's been, Julia sharing so much appreciation for sharing the personal hurdles, that like we're not alone in like the shit we put in front of ourselves and I'd love to talk more about that. And she's also loving your self-disclosure of being a book geek. Um, but like, yeah, it's when you're talking, it makes me think of like if you're serious about something, right? If you're serious
Mhm.
about that, you're not just writing for pleasure. You're writing because you want to create this body of whatever it is, your story, what you know about fiction, not fiction, whatever. That doing it with somebody can make it so much easier and can like really it can help with accountability, right? And then
Oh,
sorry, yeah, what was that? Was it,
sorry.
oh, what was that?
I just that was a noise of pleasure, of agreement. I wasn't expecting you. But yes, doing it with someone makes your load easier because we can really put a lot of pressure on ourselves, because you go, okay, especially if you listen to a lot of the gurus online, they say, pick a goal, then work towards it every day. And if you don't, you're a slacker and don't watch TV and you want your dream, do it now. And I think I have definitely adopted those voices in my head. I think everyone does, especially if you have chosen to commit yourself towards something and you want to push yourself towards it. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be fair, and we have to treat ourselves gently and push ourselves, challenge ourselves, but we also we have to honor ourselves as well. And that's mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, I can stay up every night and get 4 hours of sleep, but by the time I get to the end of the week, I'm broken down. I can't think. Really, actually, it's not even I need I'm an 8 hours of sleep a night girl, all right? Otherwise, the next day forget it. I'm done. I'm done the next day. So I know that about myself. So that's another thing is that, yeah, you have to know, you have to figure out what works for you. Like there are some people who can do a sprint. So let's say, yeah, they can polish off a book, writing a book. Like I have a co-writer. She is a productivity beast. I don't know how she does it, but I think it's her full-time gig. She can write a first draft of a book in 2 weeks. Okay, I can't do that. That's just not in me. I know that's not now, and I've learned that because I've tried it. I've tried myself not getting sleep, not respecting the other aspects of my life, as well as my other aspects of my being. So you have to start to integrate. Okay, how do I move ahead, and how do I respect me overall, so that when you get to that finish line, you're not broken down. You haven't neglected the other important things in your life. And that was a segue from your original question. Did I get your original question?
First of all, I don't know what my original question is. All I know is that is like I love that advice, right? Because it's so real, right? Like you have a full-time job and yet you've somehow published like over 20 books, right? And you haven't gone crazy, at least not that I know of. So like I love that what you're saying is like it's like any goal, right? How do you do it in a sustainable way? Like how do you do it in a way that honors the way you do things and what's going on in your life? And actually we have a question from Julia here that says, how do you and co-writers support each other? Like she wants the details. She wants the specific. Julia she wants to get down
And your co-writers
into it.
Okay. Specific. I'll give you the details. We have a system. where I will write the outline or the beats of the story. So it's just a breakdown of the story, what happens per chapter. And then I give it to her, and then she does her thing. Like, I swear she's like magic. I don't understand. And then I get the first draft, and then I edit and approve and put my special sauce on it. Does that sound naughty, my special sauce? I put my magic on it. Right? And then we'll go back and forth on the draft, and we'll write notes in the margin for each other. So depending on my mood, because sometimes I'm stank, when I'm in a good mood, I'll be like, oh, I like this part, I like the way you did this, and then we'll send questions about particular details to one another. And we use MS Word, and then you put comments in there. So we'll do the comments, and we'll send it back and forth until we're both happy with it, and then we move on to the next chapter. So right now, horror. Like, after I get off this, I have so much work to do. Like, right now, she just polished off our current book, which is like 16 chapters. And I can go through a chapter a day. Like, once I get her draft, I can do a chapter a day and do my edit and give it back. And then after that, my brain is empty. Unfortunately, this goes back to knowing how much gas you have in your tank, how much you have to share to give towards something else. But then for the other logistics, really, like, she's the organization queen. Like, she's taken on a lot. I give her total credit. She is the bomb. So we have books that are in ebook form, print, and audio. And she is really taking care of a lot of the other organizational stuff. But we will co-decide on certain decisions. Even starting with our audio books, we had narrators audition for us. So we would listen to the auditions, and we would go back and forth with who we like. So it's really a co-venture, and we make decisions together. So Julia, did that answer enough of your question?
And while she's responding, it kind of makes me think of the process that I had to go through as I was like trying to figure out how to do my social media planning, right? It's like, I feel like there was a big trial and error. Like, what is the process that works for me, right? Like, and you clearly have this process that you work with your co-writer. But I imagine that took some time to figure out how do we make this a well-oiled machine process that works for both of us?
It's trial and error. It's definitely trial and error. And it's also a similar type of process you have to go through with yourself as a solo writer. You have to get your process down, and that means you figure out the best time of day for you to write. You figure out how many. I don't like talking about word counts because it puts a lot of pressure on writers to do that, but you figure out what's good for you per day, per week, and then you break it down. And then you have to figure out what your personal rhythm is and what your goal is, and then you work towards that goal. Everything comes down to breaking it into manageable pieces that you can do. So, because for a typical writer, you go through your first draft, and then you have to go over it again. Do your own edit. Some people do it as they go. Some people do it when they complete their first draft. Some people do multiple passes over their drafts, and then they hand it over to an editor. So that's similar to the steps that we actually do, where we are going over our drafts. We do our edits. We're just sharing the edits between us. And then we pass it on to a proofer, an editor. So it's the same process when you're solo. You do your first draft, you do your edits, and then you pass it over to your editor. What you do need, every indie writer needs an editor and a proofer, okay?
Very proofer. I'm writing this down.
Like,
I'm writing this down.
For the day. Yes, that is my public service announcement for the day. It's like, yes, you need an editor and a proofer.
Gotcha. And actually, and Aisha's saying she writes for the Academy and have found a co-writer, and we're working on building our relationship. It helps because we usually have deadlines that they're working with. And that, I think that accountability piece feels like so important and helpful, because this is not something that's like you can do in a day, and I can imagine like not even month or months, like it's kind of like a long-term thing. And so I'm curious to hear more about like your process of like of supporting people in the journey. Like, what are you doing? Are you helping them with the actual like editing? Are you helping them with the process? Are you helping like how do you actually get it published like on Amazon? Like what do you do? And actually, the second piece, and maybe answer this one first, which Julia is wondering, how do you find an editor and a proofreader?
Okay. Second question first. How do you find a proof? There are plenty of places online where you can find them. Really, you could just Google editor, freelance projects, or editor, self-publishing, and plenty of places will come up. The key is finding the right editor or proofer for you. One is recommendations. You can do that. There are forums online, and you can always get recommendations and referrals that way. But I'll give you a couple of things to be aware of when you're looking for your editor or proofer. You want to have an idea of what their experience is, if they've been doing this work for long, because there are lots of people who think they have command of the English language, and they're not familiar with your editing or proofing. And they have to know, or at least like, your particular genre. Because only editors who okay, I'm geeking out, this is the stuff I love. Okay, an editor needs to understand your genre, okay? Because they will understand the pacing of that particular genre. They'll understand the common tropes that must appear in your story. So that editor or proofer needs to understand that, so they can give you the recommendations you need to make your story better. Okay, and a good editor or proofer worth their salt will give you a sample edit. So you send them 2 or 3 pages of your story, and they will send it back, and you will see what their style is, how they do their work. So that's some things that you definitely need to know about the editor and proofer stage. What I do is, remember when I talked about that mountain before? Let's say you come to certain ridges. I help people climb that mountain. So let's say they're like, oh yeah, I have a great idea for a book. I will help them get from that base ground level to the mountaintop to a published book. So I'll help them with each level. I don't particularly, I'm not going to get in the nitty gritty and actually, look at somebody's words, but I will cheerlead them on it through getting their book done. And then I will walk them through all the steps they need to do to get their book into readers' hands if they want to self-publish.
Ooh, I just get the chills. That's because, it's kind of, I never even thought about that, right? To actually have somebody to support you through that process, would just be incredible. And then you've got skin in the game because you're investing in yourself, right? To be like, oh, well, I got to use Michelle. I got to make sure she's helping me climb this mountain. And I'm curious to go. Oh, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Accountability is key, because I think everyone struggles with the daily grind, and that's how it feels. Even though you love the creation part of it. Look, me personally, I always want to watch TV. I love TV. I love stories. I love storytelling. That's what I want to do. And you really have to decide if you're going to make those daily choices to support your long-term dream. But it helps if you have someone keeping you on point. And that person needs to be outside of you. So a coach or a guide is excellent, but it could be a writing buddy who's going to keep their word to keep you on point.
So we talked about, right, some of these barriers, right? Because I'm sitting here going, and I know I got some people, we got some viewers right now that I know have book ideas. Some of them got more than one, right? And nothing is being produced. I'm not calling y'all out. I'm just saying this, right? I haven't seen a draft of these books. So, right, so we talked about, and I know the word feels big about calling, let's just call it a nag, right? You feel nagged about this thing to create.
That year.
What was you say?
Yeah, you get a whispering in your ear.
Whispering.
You hear it all the time. The whispering.
Yes, a whispering. Aisha says she feels attacked. That's because she's got to write her book. You are getting attacked, girl.
Yes.
But yeah, and in your case, you talked about you had this moment of time, like you got the pink slip and you made things happen. But like, for you, like what, and you had some accountability, but like in terms of answering this creative call, in terms of actually like putting the foot on the gas, like do you have any words of wisdom or advice to really just get people in that first step of getting your voice out there and their content out there?
Yeah, don't think about it getting your voice out there, because I hear pressure in that. You may be feeling that way, but no, you keep it simple. You keep it simple. So let's say you want to write this book. And if you have done your research, which is one of the first steps you should do. Well, the first thing you have to realize is what's your purpose for your book.
Mhm.
And then the second step is starting to research. Like if you want to write nonfiction or fiction, what genre you're going to be in. And then so once you do your genre, you'll know ideally how many words your book is going to be, what the length is going to be. Every genre has a typical word count. So let's say for sci-fi and fantasy, it could be anywhere from 80,000 to 100,000 words. Okay, that sounds like a lot, right? What you do is you break it down to the smallest chunk. How many words can you legitimately write every day, or every day that you choose? So let's say it's Monday through Friday or Saturday through Tuesday, whatever. You go, okay, I can definitely write without any pressure on myself, without feeling to step away from any shame or blame or guilt. I can do 100 words. I can do 200 words. I can do 500, whatever the number is. You pick that number and then you commit to it, and that's what you do. It's really simply getting butt in chair. In the writer's world is BIC. Okay? You get your butt in the chair and you do the work.
Okay, I got a question for you.
And
I had a question in
yes.
terms of chunking it out, right? So one strategy somebody once told me was,
Mhm.
if you write your blog post, right, you write article based whatever, and then you end up compiling that into a book, right? So then
Okay.
it's I like I know it becomes harder to have like this narrative thread, or that will be a shit ton of editing toward the end. But like, what do you think about something like that? Like where it's just like, hey, write and publish a chapter of something on your own channels. I don't care if it's LinkedIn, but like, do you think that's a
Mm-hmm.
viable way of like doing it in manageable chunks that doesn't feel so big?
Yes. And this comes back to what I said before about understanding your purpose. So what you're talking about is something that's in the nonfiction realm, which is a path that many entrepreneurs like yourself take. They want to purchase a book. They want to publish a book as a way to draw in clients. So absolutely, a lot of people take their blog posts. I've seen people take their blog posts and compile it. What they'll do is that they'll assemble it under a theme.
Mm.
Okay. And so all those blog posts apply to a theme. So let's say you have blog posts dealing with a particular topic, but let's say it answers, throw something out there. Let's say it answers, your blog post addresses the 10 top most common questions
Mm.
that someone has for your particular field. So you can put those together and then you give it a title where it addresses everything under that theme.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best way to go about doing it. All right, to think about how with nonfiction books, I think the best way to approach it is to understand what problem you're looking to solve
Mm-hmm.
and who your ideal client is going to be. I know some of those words are touchy, like people don't like the word ideal client or what problem you're going to solve, but you do have to kind of narrow it down to a single focus, because you might think, oh, my book is good for everyone, and that's not true. I think you tell me if you agree. As a coach, every person on the planet is not the right fit for you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's the same thing with your finding your ideal reader. You're looking for your ideal person, your ideal client. And so therefore you want to address them based on something that they want or need. You know, so if someone is looking for, they hate their job, it's super toxic, but that's the only environment they've ever been in, and they have no idea what to do next, then you know that that's the answer. You're going to be going to be providing answers around that topic. And perhaps that answer is broken down into 10 different chapters and takes 10 different approaches for answering that question or providing a path for that person. That's how you got to do it. Did I answer that
love
question?
that. Yeah, no, totally. You know, I guess I don't really, yeah, like you're kind of like speaking my language, right? Because you're kind of talking about a book as a product, right? And who is it you want to
Yes.
serve with that? And
Yes.
yeah, and I'm going to
You
invite
put it,
our, I'm sorry?
I was going to interrupt you saying that I'm so shallow. The way you put it is so much more lovely. Who you want to serve? So,
You are
I'm
not
like, yeah.
shallow. We're just like complimenting the languages. That's all, you know.
Okay.
I'm catching
Okay.
the ball. I'm pushing it back down to you. Yeah, and so
Okay.
I'm just going to invite some people to right now, if you want, in the comment box, just talk about who you think your ideal reader might be. Because you know this is all about moving the ball forward. So if you want to share, and we have a question from Shige who's wondering like what tools do you use and techniques, apps, what do you tap into? I think she just wants to know all your resources without paying for your
Paying.
counseling.
That's okay. That's okay. I will share. You know what? I am personally not big on any apps or tech. And for me, the more I need to keep things simple. So I use MS Word. So any word processor that works for you, you should use. And that's it, really. There are, and this is, if you have not written a word in your book yet, this is not stuff you need to worry about. The only thing you need to be concerned with is what you're going to use every day to put your words into. So that's just a word processor or a notebook or whatever. Really, if you have not written a word, that's the only thing you need to worry about. Later, when you're getting close to finishing that book, there are things that you will need to get your book into correct format to be publishable on online services like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And there are resources where you can do it yourself, because I did a lot of DIY. Woo, things have changed. Oh my gosh, technology changes so rapidly. Some of the things that I used in 2012 to get my book in the correct format to publish online, you don't even need it anymore. Like there are so many services that have come online that can help you to do that. I use Draft to Digital. I hope that's right. That's it. Draft to Digital, Digital to Draft. That's another thing I have to follow up with Tosca about, which is a service that will help you publish your book on multiple online sellers. But really, Amazon is at the point where, let's say you know for sure you want to get your book on Amazon, it'll take a MS Word doc. It'll take a .doc or docx or PDF. And if you have the right word processor, I mean, if you have MS Word or even one of the open source word processors, you know, you could do that on your own computer and then then you upload it on Amazon using their KDP platform. And it's super simple.
Right.
So to answer that question, it's one, you have to figure out the right tool for you at the right time. So I don't use a lot of tools because I keep things simple. So.
Yeah, you know, it's like we can. What I'm hearing in all of this, right, is one step at a time, and not to get overwhelmed by the entirety of the process. And part of it is like figuring out even the vision. And actually, something that comes to mind right now for me is like, you know, even doing a vision board about the book vision that you have could be an interesting way to keep that creative juices, to keep that, you know, front and center about your why and your purpose, right? For making time, right? For making time for the endeavor.
Yes. This is another thing where, Tosca, you have this lovely ideal, and I'm very basic. Okay? I'm basic. So when I say purpose, it's you have to understand what you want your book to do.
Right.
For you and for other people. Like for you, do you want to make sales with it? Do you want to attract new clients with it? Are you just putting it out there as a permanent record about, let's say, your family, your life, like a permanent record, and you just like, whoo, got that done. I don't care about it. I actually worked with someone who had written a book about farming in Thailand. And his book, it was that, but it was also semi-biographical. It was sort of a mashup. And he really didn't understand. Well, I shouldn't say he didn't understand. He wanted to tell his story and give farming tips about Thailand. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I really don't care about selling the book. I mean, he says, I wanted a few sales, but, I'm not getting any. And I said, and that's why I said, you have to understand what you want your book to do. Because I'm like, okay, well, you've written a book about your life and farming about in Thailand. So what is this book about? Like, who do you want this book to be for? Because, okay, great. If there's a market for people who want to move to Thailand, that's one segment who might be interested in your story. And then there are people who want to start a farm. Excellent. And then there are people who want to find love in a foreign land. Like on 90 Day Fiance, we should talk about that. But like a 90 Day Fiance thing, is that your deal? What like if you want to sell some books, great. Then you have to think about who are the people who are possibly going to want your book. So that's what I mean by purpose. Okay, I think you had something different.
I think it's all how people interpret it. 100%. I think there's purpose in terms. I think there is the practical. What is the purpose of your book, and also like if you want to take it to that whole other level of like what purpose does this play in your life, and I think it's all there for however people want to take it and what resonates. I think. Yeah.
And with purpose, with the purpose thing, I think a lot of people have that calling to write a book, and I think it's something that you should take the time to consider why you have that calling. Like for me, I've been making up stories in my head since I was a little kid, right? And with me, it started. I'm going to admit this. I started writing fan fiction about my favorite all-time group, New Edition. Right? So I started, my friend Cherise called me and she told me she started writing a story featuring her in New Edition. I was like, bet, I can do the same thing. And sure enough, and I started writing fan fiction about New Edition, of course, making me the center of the plot. Okay, they have all been my husband in my head at one point in time, all of them, right? So that's how I started off fan fiction. However, I had already been making stories up in my head to entertain myself even before then. And it took someone talking to me, was putting the thought in my ear to actually put it down. And that's where my love of writing started to grow, is because I just had stories. I was just coming up with them. I would see something and it would spark an idea, or the what if question, which is my favorite. Like, what if this happened? And I didn't have any choice but to start writing those ideas down, those stories down. For a long time, I never finished any stories. That's something else. And I think for those people like me, where you just have there's this pull all the time to do something, and it never leaves you alone. It might be quieted. Then you have to give into it. And when you do, it's almost a relief. It feels good. It's like if you've been resisting something for so long, when you finally say yes and it's a match for you and it's good for you, it's a moment of harmony. And for me, in my background, and the idea of being an artist, get it? What? A writer? you want to do that for? One time, literally, no joke, Tosca. This is probably after college, and I had decided that I was going to get a short story into a magazine, right? So I'm a type of writer where I just have an idea and just start writing. One day, my father walked in and walked past me he was doing something with the window, like putting in the AC or something. And he looked over my shoulder and he was like, "What are you writing that for?" And it was a crushing moment. And it could have been, his take on it could have been anything. Because I remember I was writing a story about a soldier at the moment he was going to conquer a town, right? And when my father said that, it's like I shriveled up. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people who have a creative soul, who have a creative instinct. That instinct, that part of themselves is not supported, and it shrivels and shrivels and gets tiny and tiny and tiny. And then it's just this seed. And then it's maybe sort of like the Princess and the Pea thing. When you see the princess sleeping on the bed and like under like 1,000 mattresses, but she still feels like something is wrong. She could feel that pea. It's the same thing, I think, with people with that creative instinct buried. They feel it. They know something is wrong. Something doesn't feel right. They don't know what it is. And it stays there. It stays there. And I think that with a lot of people, like myself, where you ignore it, the longer you ignore it, the deeper it goes. And the harder it is to find and accept that instinct is okay. Because like for me, like I said before, in the beginning, someone had to say to me, "What are you so published?" And in my mind, I had created so many barriers. One, it was like, I had created so many barriers. Like I already had to have money to write a book, And then I would have to do it traditionally, which I had to query agents. And the only way to publish was traditionally. And self-published, self-published has and had a lot of stigma about it not being as good as traditional publishing. And I grew up on traditional published books. So I had that thing in my mind. It's like, will I ever be good enough to be that type of writer? And I had to let that go. And I had to let the other obstacles go. And I really had to say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to dive into it. And the older you get, the longer you put that off, I think it becomes even harder to say, this is good for me. This is good for me. I'm going to do this. And it's okay. It's okay for me to sit down and make up this story. Or it's okay for me to write this book to support my business. So the sooner you jump in, the better. So for the people who are sitting on the hemp going, I don't know, just start it. Just do it. Just do it. There's no reason why you can't sit down at your computer and hack out 100 words. 100 words is nothing. It's like barely a paragraph. Everyone can do that. Everyone can do that. But if you have that drive, if that thing is bothering you, if it's unsettling you, go for it. You have to acknowledge it and go for it. Pick it up and go for it.
I love that. And Julia also is like sharing. She loves the analogy. The analogy is just so beautiful, and I think that those soul crushing moments that happen, whether it's our parents, our friends, or when we're young, and it stays with us because I think our creativity is like one of the most vulnerable parts that we share, and I think that it can. If we can be easily discouraged if we share something or, like the situation you described, and if we don't allow ourselves to open back up, like I just feel like there's so much that the world is losing because we're not willing to say, okay, this is a different moment, and I have something to share here. And I feel like it's and we talked a little bit before as our pre-conversation. It's really hard to talk about this idea of writing and putting your creativity in the world without really honoring the years and years and years of hearing the voices that are not representative of of who's living in the world, right? And who's gotten published and who's been writing and who's been encouraged and who's had the privilege and who's had the resources to make it happen. It's very democratized now, but which is great. And also, I don't know how you feel about this, but just really encouraging people to express their creativity in any kind of way, I think is important, because we've had voices that have been silenced for far too long, and we need them. We need all the voices in however they express themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. It's when you're writing, you're aware that you're writing from your experience, and really that's the only thing that you can write from, unless you have taken the time to actually research another culture, another way of being. You write from your experience. So therefore, when you put that book out into the world, you are sharing your experience from your viewpoint. And so if you're a Black woman, it comes from that viewpoint. If you're a white woman, it comes from that viewpoint. And unfortunately, we only have the experiences from one dominant viewpoint. And yeah, now is the age where we want more, where we absolutely need more. And, you know, I struggle with this particular point, because I think about an author, a white author, or an author who is writing about somebody else's culture. Let's say there's trying to think of the best way to express this. If you are a white person and you are writing a book and you have a Black character in your book, how do you have to be mindful of creating or perpetuating any stereotypes about a person of color. And you may not be doing it intentionally. You may not be aware of your own biasness. And you also can't necessarily make that Black person technically paint them in one color. Like technically they're Black, but they're really a white person. Or they act and they talk like, oh, I'm not saying this well. It is difficult to create diversity when you don't have perspective. And yes, we want to see more diversity in books and in movies and television shows, but that does not mean sticking in a brown person and having them act like everybody else. That's not actual diversity. It's more of sharing what their experiences are. And unless you do that research, it may be hard for a writer to write from the perspective of a person of color. It might be tricky. And you can't treat color as just an aesthetic. Everyone does not have the privilege of not thinking about their race every day. I don't have that privilege. Like, it colors literally and figuratively everything that I do. Whether I go traveling, when I work, when I apply for jobs, it's part of the fabric of my life where I have to think about color. I have to think about my safety when I go certain places. And a writer who has not had those experiences may not be able to add that type of color, that type of flavor to their writing, to their character, because they just don't have it. So talking about diversity is so tricky. So yeah, we do need more people to share their experiences, to create stories from their point of view, and have those stories be seen as just as legitimate and right to be in the public sphere as stories you've seen over and over again by writers you've seen over and over again. And that's the beauty of self-publishing. Is a double-edged sword. That's the beauty of self-publishing. More people who have different types of stories have the opportunity to put their words out there, to share it with the world, to connect with other people, to have other people connect to them through their tales. And the other problem with self-publishing is that you can bypass some of the standards that have been created for writing and publishing overall, standards that we need. So it's not just grammar and punctuation, it's also story structure. is also pacing. It's knowing what rules you have that you could keep and that you could break. So indie publishing is great. That's why I said before, you gotta understand the structure. Because no matter what, you don't want to put any, when you get your story out there, you don't want any barriers to someone connecting to your work. And so that's why some of that structure is needed. And see, in traditional publishing, I'm geeking out, in traditional publishing, they have all those standards in place, but their gatekeepers were severe because they only let in people who they thought were going to make money for them. But they also had those things in place that indie writers have to get on their own, which is the excellent proofing, the excellent editing, professional cover design. They have all those. They had marketing in the past. Now you kind of have to do your own marketing, even as a traditionally published writer. You got to do your own marketing. So it can work for you. It all depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, it's so many really great points in all of that because, what you're talking about is, and I kind of liken it to, well, there's several things. So, right, you're talking about being a responsible writer, right? And it's not just about, painting a color and saying, okay, there it is. Like, you have to be really, do your due diligence if you're going to sit there and represent somebody that is unlike you, and do it well.
But the due diligence is hard. It's hard. It's tricky. Right. And really, if it all depends on the kind of story that you're writing. Like,
but it might also mean getting a co-writer, right? It might also mean getting. I'm just thinking even of right in the advertising world, in the marketing world, right? If you're going to create an ad, you better have some people that don't look like you and don't talk like you look at, right? Otherwise you have the disasters that have happened in the past, million years, right? Like the Dove ads and all that shit where it was like, whoa, you didn't know what you were doing because you didn't have the right people take a look and say, like, am I doing a disservice or, here, or doing something really offensive? And I think it's interesting. I love this point that you're making about, right, quality, right? Quality of work, because it's kind of like trained photographers, right? And amateur photographers, and what it means to understand the sandbox that you're in, and then what it means to break the, right, to kind of break the rules. And I love what you're saying, which is like, look, how do you create something that you're not creating more barriers to, and that you're actually honoring a craft that takes a lot of practice and study and actually expertise. It's kind of like in marketing, right? My world of marketing, right? Like, yeah, you could go and do a fucking Instagram post, or do you want to do it that actually honors like the principles of this work? And it's a choice, right? And it's a choice. It's like, what do you care about? Do you care about like honoring the craft and doing it in a way where you're expressing yourself in the best possible way, or do you just want to get the thing out there? You don't really care about what that it could have been better, I guess.
To be fair, I think it depends on the work. It depends on the work that you're doing, and it also depends on the story itself, really. Because I'm thinking, like, I know, like, there are pantsers. There are writers who are considered pantsers, and there are some who are considered plotters. Pantsers are the ones who just make things up as they go. They don't do any pre-planning. I am a pantser. And as a pantser, the idea of having to stop to do a crap ton of research in the moment just fills me with dread. I'm not going to do that. And I probably wouldn't write a story that would call for that necessarily. So yeah, it depends on the type of story that you're writing. But yes, if you have created something like that, then it is absolutely the writer's responsibility to put out fair representations of other people.
Mm.
And I think also it would be helpful if all writers, I'm big on responsibility, but not putting too much on people. You know, if someone's just trying to get their foot in the door or just trying to get their first book out, they shouldn't be worrying about certain things. Like these are really heavy, high level concepts. However, if you do have some standing in the world, if you know what you're doing, if you've had some success, then yeah, that's an opportunity to open the door for someone, for a different type of storyteller than yourself, to come in and say, hey, let me show you how you go about doing certain things. Like, let me show you how you really can make an impact with your book. Maybe they're not giving advice regarding the story itself, but they can say, hey, this is how you can make your book get to more people.
Mm.
So that's the way of talking about doing it as well.
Yeah. We've just covered the gamut. We've gone wide, we've gone deep, we've gone sideways. I love it. And as you know, as we're coming to a close here, I know you have this awesome tool that we put in the Spotlight Series blog on the was it the writer archetype or what? Remind me now. What like?
That's better. The writer archetype. I have the writer personality quiz, where you can go to my website, you take a quiz, and it tells you what kind of writer you are and how to overcome your personal obstacles. So if you've been thinking about that book and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, it answers, it tells you exactly how you can get over that.
Okay, and where can people go? It's your website is storyandharmony.com?
Yes, storyandharmony.com.
I love that name.
And you
That's
can
so
there.
yes.
Here's a little story, right? I've started many side hustles. Since my last name is Harmon, I'm like, oh, Harmony. I stick harmony on everything now, okay? I'm like, oh, when it was real estate harmony, okay? There's always something in harmony. It works. I'm like, okay, I got it. God gave me this name. I'm going to use it. I'm like,
yeah,
story and harmony. But
I love it. I think it's perfect. I love it, especially the story in harmony. It definitely rolls, man. It rolls. So I I wish you the best of luck in this particular side hustle.
You.
Clearly, it is something you're passionate about. Clearly, you shared a lot of wise tips, suggestions, and inspiration. Certainly for me, and I know for the people watching because they've been saying so. And I guess as we close, is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't get to touch on that you're just like, oh, but I wanted to say this?
No, I think I've said it. It's if you really have this desire in your heart to write the book, just sit down and start doing it. There's nothing else that can beat that. You don't need fancy tools. You don't need a guide. You don't need a coach to start off with. Just sit down and start writing.
Yeah. Yes. Just do it. Yes.
Just do it.
Love it. Yes. And on that note, Michelle, thank you again so much for your time, for your knowledge and expertise and inspiration. And yeah,
this has been so fun. I love being out on story. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And next time I will have more lights.
No, you've been looking great. We can see you. A little mystery.
I'm a woman of mystery.
I love it. Yes, you are. You are a woman of mystery. So there ain't no lie about that.
Okay, Tasha.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
And thanks again. Ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.